Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Jess coming to you live from my house. And I am sick today, and my body is craving homemade chicken soup. And I thought that not only is my body craving homemade chicken soup because of all of the nutritional value in it, and it's just comfort food, but today is also the 9-year anniversary of the memorial from my grandmother Fiedler, and she taught me how to make homemade soup when I was a little girl and how to make this soup. So I thought this was special because it's not only nourishing my body, but paying homage to my grandmother Fiedler. So first thing we need to do is we need to cut up the chicken. So I get a whole chicken because I find that that's the most bang for your buck. If you find something on sale that's a better deal, you see the most amount of meat there, go for it. But I like using a whole chicken because we're going to be making our broth from it. I also have celery. I have some green onions. Any kind of onion works, but I would recommend sauteing it in a little bit of olive oil or butter first with some salt and pepper to bring out the robustness of the flavor first before you put it into the soup. Some carrots, and I got some baby red potatoes. They're my favorite potatoes in the world. Grew up on these. Russets are good as well, but I find that red potatoes cook faster. It all depends on how you cube them as well. We'll be going more into that later when we get into the actual vegetable and potato prep. But for right now, we're going to prep the chicken. So the first thing we need to do, let's see if I can do this. There's the chicken. Like, grab ourselves a plastic cutting board. The reason why we want a plastic cutting board instead of a wooden cutting board, you should probably already know this, is, well, germs. You don't want the germs and all of the things that raw chicken has to seep into the wood of your cutting board. So I recommend plastic, washing it, hot water and soap right after. And also, just because I'm extra cautious, I cut up my vegetables and everything on a different cutting board just in case. So here we go. So first thing we need to do, gotta open this baby up and wash it and break apart what we can. Pull out the goodies inside. Some people like using these for a gravy or something, but we're making soup, so that's your call if you want to use these and save something later. I run hot water and I fill out the cavity, just clean it all out. Wash the outside, all the skin. Check under the folds. Make sure you're giving this bird a real good bath. Plastic cutting board. All right, so what we do now, go ahead and rip this baby up. Peel off the skin. I'm gonna grab myself my handy dandy knife, but you can do a lot of this by hand, just sort of ripping apart the cavity. So what we're doing here is we're just gonna cut off the meaty parts. I haven't done this in a minute, and I don't know how sharp my knife is, so we will find out together. we go. We finally got a nice big tear. Why do we do this? It's probably a darn good reason. Personally, I'm peeling off all of the skin because I don't need it. I just want the meat, really. We could put in the entire chicken just as it was into a pot of boiling water, but I really don't think that that cooks effectively, the meat, and that's something we really care about. We don't want to get sick trying to make ourselves well. So getting through it. So inside we've got all that grossness in there. That's what we're trying to get rid of. We really just want to get as much of the meat as possible. It makes our lives easier later too when it comes to pulling out the meat from the broth once it's been cooking and cooking for a minute, right? So if you haven't had an arm day at the gym yet, this is a good one for you. All right, so handy dandy 10-quart stock pot. One of my pieces. Just get a little bit last of that skin off as much as possible. Just everything that's not meat, just trying to get as much of it off. Of course, you know, some people will debate with me and say, leave a bunch of the skin on, maybe that's extra fat, adds flavor to the broth. There's merit to that. But I usually end up leaving my broth overnight in the fridge, and I scrape off the top layer of fat the next morning because all the fat rises to the top and solidifies a little bit, kind of like butter. And so you just scrape it all off and have low-fat chicken broth. Pro tip. All right, we got everything in there. Awesome. Now I'm just going to fill it up with some water. You just want to cover it, but honestly, I want a bunch of broth. Like, I want so much broth, it's ridiculous. So I'm going to fill this pretty much to the top, a little bit less, because we are going to have, well, no, the chicken's already in there, so we're good. There isn't going to be any displacement of the water. That's why we put the chicken in before we put in the water, so we don't make a big old mess. Be right back. So it's almost about halfway full right now, but because of the displacement of the chicken in the water, that's not much broth. So we're going to keep going. All right, it's about 3 inches from the top in a 10-quart sauce stock pot. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put this on the burner, and I'm gonna end the first segment, and then we're gonna come back once we have broth, and I'll show you the rest. Hey everybody, welcome back. So it's been about an hour and a half. I set my chicken to boiling, and then I turned it down to about 7 on flame, if you have numbers, or about a medium high for about an hour and a half. Once I felt that it was about time to check on it, I went ahead and grabbed my meat thermometer, took out a piece of chicken, stuck in the thermometer and made sure that it was fully cooked. Also, you can visually tell, but I always recommend a thermometer, when you go ahead and you just see the pieces are falling apart in the broth, and you see that maybe the meat is white all the way through, and you don't see any blood or any red hanging out anywhere, then you're pretty solid. So next thing you're gonna wanna do, excuse me, so I get a little bit hot in here, I'll be right back. All right, so next thing you're gonna wanna do, we're gonna get all the pieces of chicken out and put them in a separate container. I'm using tongs. I have barbecue tongs. Basically, whatever you can use. I wouldn't recommend a ladle because that's really messy. Tongs are your best bet. Just kind of grab it at it. You are gonna have little pieces floating around too, so grab as many of those as you can. It's not imperative you do that. I mean, if they end up in your broth, it's not a big deal. But I don't have too many huge pieces because I left mine as great big pieces of chicken. Having a little bit of trouble with the big one. All right, pull the chicken out. Next thing I'm gonna do is that I don't want to actually make 10 quarts of chicken soup right now. I want to save some of my broth for later. I can make rice with it. Making rice with chicken broth is incredible. If you've never tried it, try it. I could just have broth later when I want it, make more soup, stuff like that. Another thing I didn't mention earlier, I neglected to, is that I did not just put water and chicken in here. I actually have some minced garlic. It's actually really cool. It's a little squeezy tube, so you don't even have to spoon it out of a jar. You just squeeze it in. So I put in maybe 2 cloves of minced garlic, maybe 1 clove of minced garlic. Depends on how much you like garlic. I'm not feeling well, so I put in a bunch of garlic. Also put in sea salt, Himalayan rock sea salt, pepper, and a little bit of poultry seasoning went in there as well. So our broth has some flavor going on besides chicken and water. All right, next thing I gotta do, and this is gonna be a little bit messy, so I recommend doing it wherever you can make a mess. I'm gonna go ahead and take my broth and put most of it into another container. Now, if you have like mason jars or reused spaghetti jars, once you clean them out, that's usually a good one too. So let's go ahead and pour that in there. I don't have any mason jars at the moment, so I'm just gonna use the inside of a crock pot and cover it up and put it in the fridge. All right, I've got enough for quite a bit of soup left over. All right, a little bit more chicken left in there, so I'm gonna grab that. All right, now we're gonna take this, move this out of the way. We're gonna get to working on our vegetables. Now, I've already cleaned my cutting board and my knife thoroughly with hot water and soap, a few times actually. And I also grabbed a different cutting board because I'm going to be cutting my vegetables. So you make sure you rinse off all your vegetables, get all that nice poison off of there. If it's organic, get all that nice dirt off of there. I'm going to add about 4 stalks of celery because I like celery. Celery is always a good one to rinse off well too because a lot of dirt gets stuck right here. Speaking of celery, how do you eat your celery? When I was a little kid, I used to eat my celery with ranch and then with peanut butter. Peanut butter and celery is still one of my favorite things. Does anybody do sour cream with celery or anything interesting? Do you have any celery recipes you could share? I'll show you what's going on here. All right, check it out. So nobody's ever taught you how to cut. A few things. You're going to want to cut this way. So I'm facing all the celery down. You're going to want to grab them together as much as possible. Line them up. And then you point the tip down like this, and you do a rocking motion. You have a really sharp knife, like I don't. It's actually pretty easy, but you do that, you just keep moving your fingers backwards. Pretty set. When I was younger and I didn't know how to cut, I would go, don't do that. So you go like this, you do a rocking motion. I don't use the tops, I don't use the bottoms, I throw them away. Or recycle them, or put them into your mulch, or put them into your compost, whatever you do with them. All right, so we got our celery. That's going straight into the stock pot. All right. Now I'm grabbing the red potatoes. I think I'm gonna grab 5. There's 4. There's 5. Remember, these are baby red potatoes. Rinse them off. Now, other things you could do instead of doing potatoes is you could do rice. You could do noodles, things like that. I'm just craving potatoes today. To do rice, what I recommend doing is cooking it separately with a little bit of the broth and then just tossing it in last second. That way it has all the flavor of the soup, but you don't have to think about how long are the vegetables cooking, how long is the rice cooking, etc. If you're really good at math like that, go ahead, throw the rice into the stock pot while it's cooking and then simmer it and then throw in everything else later. I cook it in a separate pan. It's easier on me. So potatoes, way to do that. You want to cut them in half either way, lengthwise. These ones are pretty, I don't know how to say it, but they're not oblong, so there isn't a long end or a short end. But if you do have a long end or a short end, it doesn't matter. Cut it in half. And then you're gonna go ahead and cut it in half again, each half, so you're quartering it to 2 pieces. And then you're gonna go ahead and just watch your fingers. Your cubes are gonna be about this big. You have a small piece like this one, you may get less cubes out of it, but they're roughly the same size, and that's what's important. You want everything to be the same size, because the worst problem with cooking potatoes is that if you have uneven sizes, some will be perfectly cooked, some will be totally mushy, and some will be really crispy and not taste good at all. So it's really important when you're doing this to go ahead and just make sure that your cubes are about the same size. I don't recommend doing slices for soup. It's just weird. I'm a weird person. I enjoy weird things, but I prefer cubes in my soup. I'm pretty sure we could do this with one of those really cool curly Q things with potatoes. You know, if you made them like crispy fries or curly Q fries and threw them in, I think that'd be really exciting. I haven't tried that yet because I don't have one of those machines, but that would be kind of fun. I think it would work around the same idea because they'd all be about the same size and you could cook them the same amount of time. All right. There's my potatoes, they're going in. So far we have celery, potatoes. Got some baby carrots. Doesn't matter if they're baby carrots or whole carrots, organic, regular. If you can't tell by now, I don't follow recipes. I just go ahead and do everything to taste. How many carrots do I want today? How much celery do I want today? Personally, I'm not feeling well, so more carrots would be a good thing for me today. You're gonna wanna do the same thing though. Make sure that your carrot slices are the same size because you have the same problem as the potato. You don't wanna have some mushy, some crispy, and some perfect. Personally, I don't. It's just confusing to your mouth. I need more carrots. These will go in the stock pot. All right. So what are you guys cooking out there? Is everybody grub hubbing? Discovering the very best Subway sandwich that there is today? Or are we all cooking at home? Have you discovered you can't cook and you're frightened because now you have to eat peanut butter and jelly for the next 3 weeks? What are your staples? Mine is coffee. I have to have coffee or else I will not get through this. I also like fish. We have a great farmer's market nearby. They have some fresh caught fish every Sunday. It's pretty incredible. There's the rest of my carrots. So I made, I don't know, was that 20 baby carrots? Now these are the green onions. I'm just gonna slice a few, but they're just gonna go on top. I don't wanna cook them. I really like their fresh taste. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if you're going to use like a red onion, a yellow onion, white onion, you're gonna wanna go ahead and take out a frying pan, a little bit of butter or olive oil, heat it up really well, chop up the onion, saute that, a little bit of salt and pepper to bring out all the flavor of the onion. It just changes it. It's fantastic. And then go ahead and put it in later. I would not recommend just chopping up onions and putting them into your soup. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and just chop these up real quick so it's done. Same concept here. I use the whole darn thing, guys. I don't know why you want to use the green part. I haven't heard of a good reason not to use the green part. If there is a good reason not to use the green part, please tell me. But I like using the whole darn thing. This little lesson is telling me that I need a new knife as well. It's not sharp at all. Or maybe a knife sharpener. All right, yeah, that's about the right amount. Just a little bit for flavor. Nothing too crazy. I'm gonna save the rest. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna put the stock pot back on the stove. Take a look at what's going on in there. Nice, right? I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back on, but it's gonna be a low medium because I want this to cook slowly. Because we have carrots, we have potatoes, we have celery, these things can take a minute to cook. How long will it take? I check every, okay, so it's gonna take about 5 minutes for it to boil because it's on a quick burner and it's already hot. So those molecules are already going, they're already hot, they're already running around. So I anticipate this boiling pretty quickly. Once you get it to a boil, then I reduce it down to a medium heat and medium low heat, and I chill and I check on it for about every 15 minutes. So while I have this on the stove, I'm gonna have it heat up to a boil, turn it down, check on it every 15 minutes, and then I'll be back with you with the finished product. And I'll also let you know how long it took. All right, take care. Hello, hello, hello. So It's been exactly 25 minutes. I paid attention. I set a timer for 10 minutes to make sure it was boiling and boiling pretty decently. And then I turned it down to the medium low like we were talking about earlier. And I cooked it for another 15 minutes. And the way I know it's done, very simple stuff here, folks. Oh my God, the house, it smells incredible. There's nothing like cooking celery and onions. Well, I didn't cook onions this time, but the celery reminds me of my grandmother's house. I would walk in and there'd be this smell of sauteing celery and onions all the time. So check it out. Cooked all the way through. Potato, check. Carrot is perfect. Tiny bit crunchy, but not too much. Cooked all the way through. Love it. And honestly, if the potato's cooked and the celery's, and the carrot's cooked, you don't even have to check the celery, but why not? Yeah, good stuff. All right, so we got all of that going on, and then I'm gonna add my green onions. So I want that fresh pop of flavor. And then the last thing we gotta add is the chicken. So I went ahead and went over to our chicken, grabbed a big piece off, and now we're over here. And I don't actually need a knife because I like great big hunks of chicken. My hands are clean, everything's good. So I'm gonna go ahead and just rip this apart. Do the easy ones first. Try not to throw too much chicken around the room. I have a cat, I don't think he'd mind. But basically, I'm just tearing them into decent pieces. And also by doing it by hand, you can take off any pieces that are kind of just excess fat or anything. You can also do this by chopping it up with a knife if you are so keen on knives that you want to do that. But I'm just going to go through here and just take decent chunks. Don't want it too shredded, really, in my opinion. If you like shredded chicken, go ahead and just shred it all up and just toss it in. If you like chunky, you can do it this way. If you like cubes, chop it up. This is where you can have fun with it. Just kind of figure out and explore your taste. How do I like my chicken and my chicken soup? Because probably for most of your life, you've just been eating other people's chicken soup if you've been like me, and you waited a long time and someone finally came along and taught you how to make chicken soup. So you just made chicken soup the way they do. So yeah, I'm showing you how I do it, but honestly, cooking is about creativity. I rarely follow a recipe. It's called meshuggah or meshugana cooking, Yiddish for like mixture or a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Haven't Googled the actual definition in a minute, but that's how I understand it. So I've got a nice pile of chicken. Go ahead and toss this in. Almost done. So yeah, recap. What do we have? We go ahead and we have chicken. We took it apart, got out as much of the bones as we could, took off as much of the skin as we could, cleaned it, completely cleaned it with water before we did any of that. Took off the skin, took out the bones as much as possible, took out the ribs, and then we went ahead and cleaned out the cavity, chopped it up into pieces as big as small as possible, really. You don't want it too small though, because then once it starts falling off the bone, it's just a mess to try to get it out of there. We went ahead and took out some of the broth and put it into another container. I'm waiting for that to cool down a little bit because you don't really want it to go from hot to cold in the fridge right away. So once it's cooled down a little bit, I'm going to put it in the fridge with a cover, and then overnight the fat is going to go ahead and rise to the top and have a nice little layer, and I can scrape that off and throw it away if I want to, or mix it through if I want a little bit fattier, richer tasting broth. So anyways, and we put we put garlic, we put salt, we put pepper, and poultry seasoning in there, into the broth as well, while we were cooking down the chicken. So once we decided that the chicken was done, it's about an hour, hour and a half. You can always just test with your meat thermometer every now and then. Take out the chicken, put in the thermometer, take a look. Took out the chicken, went ahead and put in the broth. Then we cut up all the vegetables. We could do rice if we want to. We could do pasta if we want to. I chose potatoes today. And then cook that for 25 minutes. Check it after 10. Check it after another 10 or 15, something around that. It all depends on how many vegetables you have in there, how much broth you have in there. It's science, but that's why you just got to experiment and check often when you're experimenting, because you could ruin your whole meal if you don't, to be frank. Anyways, then we went ahead and we finished our vegetables. And if you want to add onions, make sure you saute them if they're not green onions, so that you can bring out the flavor. You want to saute them in butter and a little bit of salt and pepper. And then, so we have cooked veggies. We ripped apart some chicken. We're throwing that into here. Last thing, trying it. This is where that ladle will come in handy. Here we go. This is incredible. I'm not even gonna try to be humble. I'm really excited by this. I'm also had in the back of my mind that I have some fresh ginger in the fridge, big ginger root. I'm thinking about taking some of that and shaving a little bit in here too as well. Extra kick of flavor and added health benefits and healing benefits when you're not feeling well also. I'm gonna show you what this looks like. Take a look. I'm gonna add a little bit of broth. All the colors of springtime, right? And grab a spoon real quick. I'm not a big salt person, but at this point you can add a little bit of salt to taste, a little bit of salt and pepper, whatever you want. I don't put much salt in myself because I don't like things being over salted, if that makes sense. I'm gonna feel better in a minute. Thank you for joining me in my journey of homemade chicken soup, homemade medicine, and I might be doing this again in the future because I love to cook and I have a lot of time at home right now. All my reggae concerts are not around right now. So anyways, take care, peace and love, have a beautiful day, happy cooking.